Can you all hear me? Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me now? I can't tell. Can you hear me now? Conservative Z? Yes. Okay, great. Sorry about that. All right, let me start this all again. I'm having a bit of a technical difficulties here, and this is, it's kind of disconcerting. But okay, so let me start this all over. Welcome to the UnWokable podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gousley. If you are watching on Facebook, okay, do me a giant favor. Click the link that's in the chat there and go watch this on YouTube. That helps me out a lot more. I hear that I'm being shadow banned, and I can kind of see that on Facebook. And YouTube is kind of doing the same thing. I had a big old jump, but so because of all that momentum, it kind of carried over. So I don't know. It's strange things are happening. They don't like the stuff that I'm saying, even though I'm not saying anything inappropriate, right? It's that I'm not saying the right things. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention the big news of yesterday evening, the big national news, which was that the speech by President Biden. So that entire speech was indicative of a systemic, cultural, and now legal discrimination or legal discrimination against people of certain political leanings. Biden made it clear that he did not have any tolerance for anyone that is right of Liz Cheney. And that is really concerning because the whole political apparatus as we know it has shifted below our feet, okay? It has moved. The Overton window has shifted so far left that now, in order to be considered an acceptable Republican, you have to be a liberal Democrat from 3 or 4 years ago. So I think the whole media apparatus is now gearing up. You can see it with the FBI raid on the Trump complex. You can see it in the weaponization of the IRS that's getting ready to happen. You can see that in the schools, which is what I'm going to get into today more locally. So all of this is to say that we have to remain vigilant, and we also have to not be stupid. Okay? So what I mean by that is don't give the left an excuse for you for them to make you what they want you to be, if that makes sense, right? So I've been having some conversations with some local people and some non-local people. Actually, it's really the same conversation, and it comes out like this. An incident will happen in a school because I get literally dozens of things a day, okay? And what I spend a lot of time doing from schools around the area and even schools outside of the state, people send me things because something I've been doing behind the scenes on a kind of massive level for the last 2 or 3 years is advising political candidates, school administrators, teachers, parents on the best ways, first of all, to deal with these kinds of situations. Because what people have to understand, and what this show is designed to do, the midday media DeTransition, right, is to make you understand or help you understand that this is a narrative war. Okay, this is a war of the media, and the problem with that is that the people on the right don't have control of the media apparatus at all. It's actually actively against anybody, right of uh, Liz Cheney, but even she, if she were to come out and talk the way that she talked when she first ran for Wyoming congresswoman, she would still be lambasted by the left. But because she's going after Trump, and say what you want about Trump, Trump has good and Trump has bad, but the way that he's being singled out in terms of the way that other presidents have been treated over the course of time is obviously hypocritical. But I digress. So I get constantly bombarded, which is great. I keep them coming. Okay, keep all of those things coming. If you have a question about how to deal with something, you have a situation that you want highlighted, all of those kinds of things, send those to me. But this narrative war is we don't want to become or give them reason to paint us as what it is that's going to make them win or help them win the battle or win the war. Does that make sense? So there's this tactic that's coming out, and a lot of what I hear is that, well, the term racist or the term homophobic or the term uh, all of those terms that they throw at you have no power anymore. And I agree with that assessment to an extent. Okay. Yeah, they've largely made it less effective, especially amongst anyone who can see through the BS. Okay. But here's the problem. When you're fighting, there's reality and then there's narrative. Critical race theory, critical theory, which is what all of these institutions have adopted, have adopted a mindset that narrative equals reality. And this is what I was highlighting on the show yesterday, right? They set a narrative, they set a trap, and they then spin it so much that it becomes what the effective reality in the space, regardless of what is true. Okay? That's the dangerous part about this, and that's why we have to remain vigilant and we have to fight that battle in real time. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to fight this battle in real time now, which is exposing the blatant falsehoods of this media narrative as it's happening. So there are a couple of incidents that come to me, literally 3 or 4 in the past few days, where I've given the same advice. And the same advice is, first of all, diversity, when you're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, which is critical race theory in practice, okay? The shield that they use to protect themselves is the diversity component, meaning that they will do things and literally present themselves in ways physically and to induce a reaction, especially from kids. Now, the reaction from a child may be a sincere one in of fear or of misunderstanding or of just completely being taken off guard by something that even to adults makes no sense to visually view, right? But that's the point. And what they do is they feed off your reaction, right? They feed off the reaction and weaponize your reaction against you and say that your natural reaction to something that is, especially in a child's mind, frightening or presents as a threat to them, that's what's weaponized against the target, right? So if someone in a space, walks in and has a drag outfit on that's, scantily clad and showing too much skin, and they just happen to be a teacher in a classroom, the reaction to that's obviously beyond the pale, right? Although it's happening, it's beyond the pale. But what will happen is that a child will react to that and say certain things a certain way, and the the critical activist teacher will turn that into the parent raised a bigot. You get what I'm saying? So, or the parent is a bigot, or the child is a bigot for any number of reasons. So, and I'm going to underscore a little bit of this today in some other ways, but that's what's being weaponized with the Biden administration as well. The Biden administration is saying that because, as he termed them, MAGA Republicans, don't agree with the ideas of, pardon me, don't agree with the ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is critical race theory in practice, as we do, then they are bad, then they are evil. And the rhetoric he used yesterday was Hitlerian. I mean, almost verbatim. And I can show you that. I should have written that up. But if you, there's a few tweets out there, I'll try to find and highlight. But the othering of an entire group of people that, at least as of 2020, was 74 million strong, is exactly why I had it's exactly what leads us down the road of something much more sinister in the future. And if you know history and you've studied that portion of history, the way that was actualized, the way that was actualized was not, it's like one day that was happening. It was a years long process. So 36 is when that turn, 1936 is when that turn started to take shape. And then, by 1941, obviously there's much bigger things happening. So what Biden said and how he was presented yesterday, and I did a little funny video. I did a couple little funny videos because I think you've got to honestly mock them into submission a little bit by showing what it is that they're actually trying to do. But what he was doing was othering people to the extent that he's supposed to be a uniter, but he's literally dividing us for a purpose. And now you're seeing a bunch of false narratives being thrown out at the local level that are supporting this. And one of those is book banning. Okay. And they're making it an explicitly Democratic versus Republican issue and completely avoiding the premise of it, which is the reason the books were banned and who did the banning. The books were illegal before they stepped foot through the doorways of the school. The ones we're talking about, genderqueer and flamer, and those with, they were illegal for minors to have. And the librarians and the administrations of these schools implanted them into the libraries. These are your student services people. Okay. They're your DEI officers. They're your librarians, and they're your superintendents. Are, I believe, putting these books into the classroom to cause this furor so it can be so they can use the teachers as the human shields for the administrations that are going to keep doing this after we deal with the teachers. Right? That's what you have to understand here, is that all of this is a mechanism to place teachers as a unit, not individual, but as a unit. So Summer Boimier, the teacher who resigned, right? And now they're spinning that the way that they can. I'm going to highlight that, just the few little changes that have happened here in a minute. But they're using her now as the example, even though she resigned and was not punished in any way, even though she should have been. And what Ryan Walters is trying to do now is actually hold her responsible for doing something illegal in the classroom. Because by removing her teacher certification, because she may, and this is where it's all about intent, right? And Because as I've discussed before, intent in a criminal sense, right, can mean the difference between a person ends someone else's life, right? And either way, the result, the impact is the same, right? The life is ended. Now, the intent behind the ending of that life can, under our legal system, decide whether you have your life ended by the state or you are completely free, as if nothing had happened in your life, and then as if you had never done it, right? If you end someone's life because you're defending yourself because they're attacking you in your home, for example, they break in your house and try to hurt you and you end their life, you're not going to be put to death for that. But if you flip the script and you go to first degree murder, right, and you've planned somebody's death and then carry out with that, and it's malicious and it has all the requisite factors of intent, then you can be put to death for that, right? Summer Boimier has made it clear that it was her intent to and she's done this all over the internet, she's done it all over the news media, that it was her intent to share the book Genderqueer with her students. Not just books, not just a library code. She said in subsequent interviews and on Twitter and all over the place that her intent was that this specific book that is grotesque, she wanted to put that in the hands of her students any way that she could, and she would do it 1,000 times over again. And so Ryan Walters talking about the removal of her certificate is warranted because of her intent. That's it. Will that apply to every teacher in the district? No. That's the point. If say the same thing happened and she had seen that QR code and then got a different QR code for, say the school library, right? And say she had them both screenshotted in her photos, right? And she would accidentally send one over the other. If her intent wasn't to do what she did, then you judge what happened based upon her intent. But she's made her intent clear that she wants to politically and sexually indoctrinate students in the classroom and is willing to break the law to do that. And the law she's breaking is not 1775. The law she's breaking is obscenity laws that have existed in Oklahoma for much, much longer than 1775. The law she's breaking is disseminating links to inappropriate material to her students in the classroom. That's what she's breaking. Now, I want to talk about something real quick, and I've mentioned this in passing at least once. But I think it's very fascinating that the media has taken up this notion that it's Ryan Walters and or the governor and or the Republicans and or 1775 that are calling for these book banning. Right? Because what we know is that the only person that has had any direct power over this situation with the books is the current state superintendent. Okay? And I'm sorry, I'm going to find something here, but and that's the only person. So there's a story out of News Channel 9 that I picked up yesterday, and I thought it was very telling. And I'm going to try to find it here. Sorry, I've had a couple of weird things happen with my computer. Imagine that. Here we go. Okay, so here's News Channel 9. I'm going to share this with you. And I picked this up yesterday. And I'm just going to read this to you. If I can find it. Lordy, sorry. There we go. So I'm just going to read this to you. So this was yesterday, and it says Secretary of Education seeks certification credentials removed for former Norman teacher. Okay, and they're painting this as, okay, Ryan Walters leading the charge. He actually is. That's good. But what they do is they completely avoid this. I'm sorry. They completely avoid the narrative hypocrisy here from their own channel. Okay? Because they're giving Joy Hofmeister a pass based on her sentence, and they're playing into the narrative of the false narrative of this teacher being a victim, when this teacher was seeking what it is that she's doing. So let me just read this to you. This is from News 9 in Tulsa. It says, in a video shared by State Rep. Logan Phillips, Secretary of Education Ryan Walters said that the administrative credentials can and should be taken away when rules are broken. Okay? And I already don't like that sentence. Which rules? Because not every rule being broken is something that should warrant a teacher's certificate being taken away. So already they're painting a false narrative, right? And not every single instance will rise to that level. So they're avoiding the point, which is that what he's calling for is her disseminating books that shouldn't have been in the classroom in the first place by law to students, and having then gone out the week afterwards and said that she did it on purpose for the specific purpose of those students seeing the books that are not appropriate for them to see because they're underage. So just hypothetically, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that she broke obscenity laws. If that is right, what she did, her going out and saying that she has intent to do it again is conspiracy to do it, which I believe is another kind of law breaking, right? But the name at the top of Walter's list is now, I'm reading now. So the name at the top of Walter's list is now former Norman High School teacher Summer Boimier. If you don't have a teaching certificate or an administrator certificate, you're not working in schools. The state superintendent can take those away, Walter said in the video. Now, this has been misconstrued as well. What he's saying is that if you have a teaching certificate, a normal one, and they're trying to spin this on him too. It's amazing. If you have a teaching certificate and the State Board of Education revokes it, you're not going to be teaching anymore. He wasn't talking about alternatively certified teachers. And that's been spun out of the realm of all reality. Because they have nothing. So that what they do is they grasp at straws and they try to confuse everyone. And the media, if they did this with an honest media, it would never go anywhere. If they did this with an honest media, it would never, ever, ever go anywhere. Okay, so Boimier, and I'm continuing. Boimier didn't want to comment for this story. What? Okay, anyway, Boimier didn't want to comment for this story. She resigned after a parent complained about something their student learned in Boimier's English class. It wasn't a specific topic or lesson discussed. I don't even understand that paragraph or why it's there. Boimier didn't want to comment for this story. She resigned after a parent complained about something their student learned in Boimier's English class. No, that's not even correct, News 9. It's not even close to being correct. And it's a sentence that doesn't even fit into the structure of what it is you're talking about. Boimier didn't. I'm going to read it one more time. See if you can parse this out for me. If you're listening, parse this out for me because I don't hear it. I don't see what the context is here. But I don't want to spend too much time on it on bad writing, basically. But Boimier didn't want to comment for this story. She resigned after a parent complained about something their student learned in Boimier's English class. It wasn't a topic. It wasn't a specific topic or lesson discussed. Okay, I'm just moving on. Just Secretary Walters said she gave access to pornographic materials along with what he called the liberal political agenda, which is true. That is true. So you have some narrative here that doesn't make any sense. That actually says something patently false. Ryan Walters, and this is editorial. This is from the writer. It's not in quotations. This is from the writer of who's the writer of this article? Brittany Toulis. This is narrative. This is editorialization. So Secretary Walters actually says what's right. And teacher lobbyist group Professional Oklahoma Educators agreed. And of course, we inject some teachers union. It's now the POE is not a normal teachers union. It's more of a conservative teachers union. And I've met Ginger Tenney, but I will confess I don't know enough about her to comment on her. So I'm just going to read what she said. She probably felt strongly to be an activist. Probably good to keep your activist attitudes outside of the classroom. That's right, Ginger Tenney. POE Executive Director Ginger Tenney said, the parent is saying, that's not appropriate for my child. That's right. Okay, so I'm agreeing with Ginger there, right? Physical books were not in the classroom. Instead, Boimier provided a QR code to open the literary QR code to open the public library and its books unbanned page. Who's writing these and who is the copy editor? Am I just reading this wrong? Honestly, tell me because I'm seeing a Facebook user say the POE is not a union. Okay, thank you for that, and they have no political affiliation. Okay, thank you for that, Facebook user. I can't see who you are, but I appreciate that information and I stand corrected. But I have met Ginger Tenney and I agree with what she says here. That I can state to. Okay. But yeah, News 9 needs to get a new copy editor. She was placed on administrative leave prior to her resignation. This is not true. The school administrators are probably I guess this is Ginger Tenney saying this. She was not placed on administrative leave prior to her resignation, according to Norman Public Schools and according to her. This is, y'all got to stop stepping in this. Can I just make one aside here? Republicans, especially older Republicans, you're 4 years behind, at least, on the importance of what social media does in this narrative war. And I've been looked down upon, sloughed off at different times because I realize that they drive their narrative by planting their stories, just like we talked about in my video yesterday. Please go back and watch that. It may be the most important video I've ever done. Go back and watch this episode yesterday, the very first episode of this show. But Republicans, you are so far behind the narrative because you look at everything social media as being some kind of, oh, well, that's not real life. It makes real life right now. That's what I'm telling you. They set a narrative and you pick it up because you're reading old, and when I say old, hours old news stories as if it is what's actually happening in the moment, and you're reading what they wanted you to read. That's why Ryan stepped into it yesterday, or with the whole firing issue. And that's why Ginger Tenney right here steps into it this, saying that they placed her on administrative leave when they didn't. Or no, wait, hold on. This is one of the most poorly written articles I've ever seen. Physical books were not. No, this is the story editor. Oh my lord, this is the story writer. I'm sorry, Ginger. I'm sorry, but my point does stand. That is happening. But she was placed on administrative leave prior to her resignation. So she wasn't. And that reinforces their narrative. The school administrators are probably afraid that this parent was going to go complain. And of course, seeing what happened in Mustang in Tulsa, they didn't want to be the third school that their accreditation could be jeopardy, said Tenney. That's not. That's not what happened. Go watch the show from yesterday. Oklahoma Educators Association President Catherine Bishop fired back with a following statement. The OEA is concerned about the action today of a statewide education political appointee demanding that the State Board of Education revoke the certificate of a teacher. This is problematic. Anytime you see the word problematic, your spidey sense should be coming up, okay? It's a literally a Marxist word. It's a narrative word. To make something problematic, it pejorativizes things, okay? Immediately. So this is problematic because it's based on an inaccurate interpretation of the facts and state law. It is not only harmful to the target of his comments, but also embroils him and others in unneeded controversy. They created the controversy, and the Republicans here stepped into it. Ryan Walters stepped into it, and quite frankly, Ginger Tenney is stepping into it, even though she's nonpartisan. She's stepping into it because what she's doing here is going to work against her goals. I know where she sits on some things, and one of them is she's not for school choice. Guess what? Look at me. I'm not necessarily either. But Ginger Tenney, you're stepping in it here. You are behind the curve. They lay narrative breadcrumbs at your feet, right? And you just follow them right along, and you're going to follow them right off the cliff. Just like I believe Ryan Walters and them are doing with school choice in general, by the way. Okay, but don't follow their narrative breadcrumbs. And all of those are set in in Twitter, on Facebook. They're beating you online. They're beating you, like just hand over fist beating you. Okay. So, but I want to get to the point of what I did here. So why I brought this up. Because all of this, first of all, amongst being a very poorly written article, okay, all of this underscores a point. They're making this Ryan Walters versus the teachers. The books in question here, the books that, I'm going to throw this up here real quick. The books in question have been labeled, correctly so, pornography by the one person who actually has some authority. But here's what channels like News 8 out of here are doing, okay? Oklahoma teachers weigh legal protection options in the aftermath of book bans. State Superintendent candidate Ryan Walters took to social media to say that took to social media to ask the State Board of Education to revoke the license of a teacher. Pardon me. I'm sorry. And what they do is they carry the same narrative that they just had in the previous article. But what they forget to mention, here's the operative part. Walters is calling on State Superintendent Joy Hofmeister to do your job and revoke Wamie's teaching certificate, adding that there's no room for liberal political agenda in the classroom. Hofmeister's office says they won't comment on Walter's statement. You ready for this? First of all, Ryan made a mistake. This should not have been the issue. This is happening, and he's right. And I'm wondering what the narrative here, because again, the editorializing, they took a quote and just implanted it here from him, which means it's probably not Ryan. It's the news, right? It's not Ryan. So they take him out of context here, and they, instead of saying pornography in the classroom, they say liberal political agenda. Now they're putting pornography in the classroom to push a liberal political agenda. And when I say liberal, I mean leftist. I mean woke. I mean Marxist identitarian. Using sexuality to remove your child from the family's orbit. Making children more and more adult-like at a younger and younger age. How do you do that effectively? You introduce them to sex earlier. That's how. You get what I'm saying? So, but the issue here is that they just go on. Hofmeister's office says they won't comment on Walter's statement. And then you go through the rest of it and they say nothing else about Hofmeister. This is what pisses me off. Hofmeister's already made a statement on this and they're not holding her to it. Want to see? I'll show you. One second. Look, same channel, July 27th. Hofmeister demands removal of pornographic books reportedly in Tulsa school library. Do you see that? So this story, going back here, I'll try to reshare. Okay. This story going back here says that Hofmeister will not make a statement about this issue. Then this story coming back here, they refuse to mention that Hofmeister made a statement on it. She made a statement on it on July 27th. They're playing with the minds of Oklahoma voters here by creating a completely false narrative. And they're making Summer Wamier some kind of martyr when she chose to resign and didn't have to because she wasn't in trouble. And now they're reinforcing, as of today, her victimhood status. Because again, victimhood, this is what she's doing to her classroom. Is what she wants to do to her classroom is the same thing they're doing to you in the media, okay? With this situation. That's what they're doing in this classroom. Is the same thing they're doing to you in the media. Is that they take a diversity issue or they take a martyred issue, right? And they throw it out there, and then any pushback against her makes her the victim. Now, why I said at the beginning, and this is connecting, why I said at the beginning that we should not be doing stupid things to make them paint us as the people they want us to be, it only hurts the legitimate cause. Now, but here's my issue though. I'm going to make a claim. And I'm going to make this claim deliberately because of the way that this is outlined. Summer Boismier is claiming now, according to Fox Channel 8 again, she is claiming that she fears for her life, her safety. A former Norman High School teacher, fearing for her safety amid a classroom controversy surrounding Oklahoma's ban on critical race theory. Again, they are still pushing this. They are still pushing this. A complete fabrication. On the first day of school, Norman High School English teacher Summer Boismier shared a QR code with students, directing them to the program through the Brooklyn Public Library, providing free ebooks called Books Unbanned. She says she was placed on leave immediately after a parent complained. She has since resigned. Norman Public Schools, this was written today. And Wendy Suarez said that Norman Public Schools, she was never placed on leave. Police responded to her apartment for harassment complaints on Wednesday. Boismier told officers she has been receiving vulgar and threatening emails. Boismier also showed officers one email that had her apartment number on it. In one message shared with Fox 25, someone told Boismier that she doesn't deserve to live amongst us and called her a pedophile. Boismier's saga has gained nationwide attention, and she's worried that people may show up at her apartment. She no longer feels safe returning home. First of all, I'm going to say this. Whoever, if this is actually happening, so I'm going to accept her premise for the moment. Whoever is doing this needs to be arrested and charged if it's illegal, but people need to know who it is. What I find, and it should not be happening, Summer Boismier should not be harassed and threatened. And if some stupid conservative is out there doing that, don't. You're just making their case for them. But I contend this, based upon what I've already uncovered about the complete fabrication of this, I think there is a possibility that it is BS. Another manufactured incident. Here is my main problem with this. Here's the picture of the threat. Why are we protecting the identity of somebody who's supposedly making threats? Why? Why is this blurred out? My first interaction with this would be, okay, I don't want Summer Boismier threatened. If you're going to talk about the threat, show the handle of the person who made the threat and let's find out who they are. I'll help do it. If you show me that handle, dollars to donuts, I bet you I can find out who that is. But my concern here is, I don't think they want to find out who it is. Just like I don't think you're ever going to find out who made the supposed threat to Norman Public Schools to try to change the narrative in that way. You will never hear about this again. You will never hear about this again. But here it is in the ether, making her look like a victim in all of this, when she is the one who completely set herself up for this whole situation. But what you have to understand is now she's only economically viable. She's only politically viable if she remains a victim. So that means you have to have a continuing course of conduct, either against her or by her, to keep that moving. And you have to have news organizations feeding that narrative. Explain to me News Channel 8 Tulsa. What is the rationale behind not sharing the handle? I understand. The funny part about this is that they blocked out the bad words that you can't show in a news story, all of which appear in Genderqueer and Flamer dozens of times. The book that she shared with the kids, the book to the QR code that she shared with the kids, that she said that she wanted them to see that book, that was the purpose of her sharing it. These are the questions you have to ask every time you read a news story. And here, when I say you have to ask it, not just in your own head, you have to go around to your fellow people, your family, your friends, your coworkers, and ask the same questions that I'm asking. And then go and ask the news organization. Why? Why? What is the policy here? If they didn't use the real name, why aren't you showing the handle? Tell us where this came from. Was it on Facebook? She said emails. Doesn't look like an email. It looks like a Facebook account. But I can't tell. So I don't know everything. But either way, give us the email address. I bet you I could find out who it is. But here's the issue. Even if that's not the case, even if I take them, and my question here is that the case? Let's not accept their premise that some unknown person sent a threat, and we've already established that she's lied about other things to reporters already. Because I guarantee you she was the source for Wendy Suarez. And she was not placed on leave. Why are we accepting the premise? I want to hear from the police, since this was put out into the media. The police said that they requested her address to be listed for extra patrol. I want the police to follow up on this. I want to hear a follow-up on the threat made to Norman schools at the most opportune time, and I want to hear a follow-up on who this is. All the cyber crimes unit has to do is run an IP check on this. They could find, if they have the IP address, they can literally bring it right down to the address. They can pinpoint it GPS style. Yep. So I'm going to be asking. There's no place for a teacher with a liberal political agenda in the classroom. And then they immediately move. Do you see what they did here? They immediately move from that, the extra patrol, right to Ryan Walters and him asking to have her revoked. This is journalistic malpractice, because here's the problem. News Channel 8 Tulsa claims to be a non-biased news organization. It's ABC News Channel 8. And all of the reporters here claim to be non-biased reporters. And they won't even put their name on it. It's by KOKH staff. Who's the reporter who wrote this? It's ridiculous. And then that leads to the cherry on the icing on the cake here. Okay. And I'm gonna have to get off this story. I'm gonna keep on this because I think it's really important for the local things that are coming up. to understand how this is going to progress. But I want to show you something that I put up a while back on Twitter. And I see I have my 4 people. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading a message. Interesting. I'm not sure I'm going to share that yet, though. Okay. I don't know if the handle belongs to a minor, but here I'm going to show you where this comes from. Summer Wamier is the product of a hiring process instituted by Norman Public School Superintendent Nick. I can never say his last name. I'm super sorry for this, Nick, but I'm sure he doesn't want me to be saying his name anyway. But the superintendent, Mick Miglariano, okay? But I'm going to show you exactly how Summer Wamier got to be where she was. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to show you exactly how that apparatus is now being tucked away and hidden in a bureaucratic mess. And prove to you that critical race theory is being practiced in Norman Public Schools. And as far as I'm concerned, when I'm done doing that, I'm going to submit the videos to the State Board of Education and demand that they remove Norman Public Schools accreditation. Remove it. Because I'm going to provide more evidence against Norman than any single incident. Got that, my 4 people? And there's really not anything that you can do to stop it at this point because it's already been recorded. So, already scheduled and ready to go. So, but this is the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to show you where it all began. So, this is Norman Public Schools school superintendent Nick Miglariano, okay? And he's very excited about empowering his DEI director at the time. See, now they've switched her. They think they're so clever. They really do. She was the DEI director, and now they've switched her name because I was going hard after DEI. I'm not going to say that yet. But the people protecting Norman Public Schools aren't who you think they are all the time. There's a lot of interest there. But I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the lies. And I don't care what money is going where. Norman, Oklahoma Public Schools Superintendent Nick Miglariano is very excited about empowering his DEI director to violate federal law to hire and not hire faculty and staff based on the color of their skin, gender identity, and woke politics. This is from a video interview done in late 2020 into early 2021 with the Norman Chamber of Commerce. Okay. And this is the beginning of what you're seeing now. Had this process not happened, you would not be seeing what you see now in the schools. So for the 3 people who are watching, if you're interested in actually watching because you want this information to help the schools, share this part of the video. Okay? Because this is the biggest thing. I'm going to do a whole series on this. But it all began here. And so this is from a webinar that Nick did with the Norman Chamber of Commerce. And the video he talks about, this is all about what is called factuality. Commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This video alone, had it been after April, okay, would have been enough to downgrade Norman Public Schools. But I got news for you. Here's the thing. I want to test this. I think that no matter what I send about Norman Public Schools, they won't downgrade that school. I hope I'm wrong. I think I could have a choir singing of teachers, of Norman high school teachers or Norman school teachers singing, "I teach critical race theory every day, and here's how," and then do a slideshow. And I'm not sure that it would do it. But I want to be wrong about that. And I hope that I am. But here's Nick. So, diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about hiring. Who you hire, who you fire, who you keep, who you don't. All the training, like the diversity training or even the curriculum, is secondary to the hiring processes. And it must be understood that the way that they hire is illegal, federally and statewide. It's illegal. So, but here are the responsibilities according to Nick, Superintendent Nick, okay, of Stephanie Williams, the DEI director. First, to conduct critical race theory, gender theory, ideology trainings designed to embed and enforce systemic discrimination, anti-racism, CRT praxis. Okay, that's my little addendum from the top down in Norman Public Schools. And here I'm just going to play him saying
it. And I've said this before. This is something that probably I am the most excited about of anything that I've ever had a role in doing.
He's talking about DEI.
You know, from the time I was at Irving as a teacher and a coach to from the time I got named as superintendent, diversity has been something that's been on my mind. The way I grew up, the friends I had, you know, it's always important to recognize who's around you. And so with that, this year we were
the implication is that people can't see. Okay, so he's your superintendent, and the thing that he's most excited about, thing he's most concerned about, is the way people look. That's literally what he just said. Moving forward.
To hire our executive director of DEI, Ms. Stephanie Williams. Many of you know her. She's been an assistant principal at
she's now the student services director
here at Norman North, you know, state assistant principal of the year, principal at Longfellow, but also last year began running, or a year and a half ago, running our diversity and equity council. And this year I was able to hire her as the executive director of DEI for Norman Public Schools. And
a position that no longer exists. A position that no longer exists after I've spent the last year and a half behind the scenes railing against it. Why doesn't it exist? It does still exist. It's just now called the student services director. Just for the record.
I'm speechless on how excited I am about this. She is doing an incredible job. Her roles and what she's already started doing, she's brought in training and awareness training for all of us, starting from the top down. Our board members are engaged in going through trainings. Our principals are going through trainings, and she has a lot of things in store for this district. Her responsibility.
Okay, now, so just I want to hit that point again. So in 2020, late 2020, when this was done, she had already been working, and she was putting all of the leadership in the schools through these trainings before she ever touched the teachers. Wait till you see this training. And you will. Yes, you will. But I just want to underscore this.
And awareness training for all of us. Her roles and what she's already started doing, she's brought in training and awareness training for all of us, starting from the top down. Our board members are engaged in going through trainings. Our principals are going through trainings. And she has a lot of things in store for this district.
Yes, she does. Okay, then the next part of the video. Her second responsibility is to lead NPS recruitment cadre. Yep. Lead it. In the explicit goal of violating federal law by discriminating in hiring practices based on race, gender identity, and most importantly, although not explicitly mentioned or stated, CRT DEI political ideology, which is wokeism, Marxist identitarianism. So listen to this.
They're going through trainings, and she has a lot of things in store for this district. Her responsibilities, I just want to share those to tell you how important this position is to our district. Is her, first of all, she's going to help lead our recruitment cadre. We believe that our faculty should represent our students. Our students should be able to go to school and see people who look like them. So we're putting an emphasis on recruitment of not only the best, but intentional recruitment when it comes to diversity.
Okay. Not only the best, but intentional recruitment when it comes to diversity. This tells you in practice what diversity means. Okay? They are going to, and have been since the day this video came out and before then, do identity-based and politically based litmus tests. So they're using affirmative action and that loophole in the kind of, not even in the law, but it's just in the in the social psyche, to say, okay, well, we're going to look for people of color or people of marginalized identities. But really what they've been doing is weeding out conservative people who wouldn't agree with the politically Marxist identitarian ideology that they're implanting into school. And Summer Boismier is the proof of that. They went out and recruited because a recruitment cadre, I'm going to play this again and listen to what he says about the intentionality of it. So the DEI officer was the head. She was the lead of the recruitment for the teachers. And they're now blaming everything under the sun about why they can't get teachers in Normal Public Schools, or you have teachers quitting right now. Okay? Quitting because of the way things are at the schools. But you have them quitting because most teachers don't want to work in this kind of environment. So they went out and found the wokest teachers they could find. Most often the youngest teachers they could find. So I'm just going to let you listen to that again.
Share those to tell you how important this position is to our district. Is her, first of all, she's going to help lead our recruitment cadre. We believe that our faculty should represent our students. Our students should be able to go to school and see people who look like them. So we're putting an emphasis on recruitment of not only the best, but intentional recruitment when it comes to diversity.
Intentional recruitment when it comes to diversity means discriminating against people in the hiring process based upon their identity and their political ideology. Watch Project Veritas's last just put out today expose on their student activities director who's doing this exact same thing in New York, that they caught her. Okay, here's the next part. Her third responsibility as DEI director is continued training of CRT DEI gender theory ideology through teacher trainings or professional development and look, library materials to enforce radical woke ideologies. And he's going to say that, not me. He's going to say library materials. Watch.
Recruitment when it comes to diversity. Also, professional development, I mentioned that. She's working closely with Beth Albert and all of our principals on professional development, working with our libraries and what materials we have in our buildings, but also.
Just one more time. So this is 2020. Didn't have any porn in the schools then. Not that we know of. Wasn't hearing about it. 2020. You put DEI in charge of the library materials.
What materials we have in our buildings, but also development, working with our libraries and what materials we have in our buildings, but also.
Yep. She's making the libraries more inclusive by putting porn, by including porn in the libraries so that it can be seen by children. Okay, but the most important responsibility of the NPS DEI director is enforcement of CRT DEI gender theory ideology via top-down school policies. This is the anti-racism of it all. So Ibram Kendi defines anti-racism as policy-based. You can only be an anti-racist if you support anti-racist policies. What is an anti-racist policy? Any policy that Ibram Kendi likes. Any policy that the DEI directors likes is an anti-racist policy, regardless of whether it has anything to do with race or not. It's like calling every soda a Coke. You get what I'm saying? Not every soda is a Coke, but every Coke is a soda, right? You know what I mean? So just listen. Again, I'm backing it up with what he says.
Libraries and what materials we have in our buildings, but also she is looking at and auditing all of our district policies to make sure we're not missing anything, that things aren't going through that shouldn't be going through.
That shouldn't. So
Stephanie,
she is a commissar.
you're doing. I know all of us.
She is the commissar. She's the policy commissar for the school. And that's why she's the student services director now. She's going to make sure that every single part of the school, every single aspect of what's happening in the school is going to fit the political ideology. And one last thing to prove my point. One last thing to prove, to have some evidence of that this has been happening. Here is roughly a year and a half later.
What books are out? What posters?
This is video evidence. Normal Public Schools DEI is using closures, and this is closures. This is during COVID, to have teachers do equity walks to see what materials were being put out and to make sure that they hit a political message. And so they weaponize teachers against other teachers. They call them equity champions. And every district has one. Every school building has one, or 2, or 8, or 12. And their only job is to walk around and tell on each other. What does that sound like to you? So this video here is they're telling, they had a sheet that these people walk around and they have their teachers say, okay, they walk into, Miss So-and-so's room, and if they don't have enough equity stuff on the wall, they turn it into the DEI director via these equity detectives. Look up the video on my channel. It'll explain it. Via these equity detectives, and they tell on each other. And then the administration comes down on the teacher. And if the teacher refuses to acquiesce, the teacher quits. Don't tell me that there's a teacher shortage because of COVID, or because it's because of this kind of crap that most good teachers are leaving, and they don't have enough competent, younger activist teachers to fill the roles. Or ones that won't use it as a springboard to become an activist like Summer Blamiak. I'm just going to play it.
Who's represented in those things? What books are out? What posters are up? So those are the things that they're wanting us to look at through an objective eye.
Objective.
And I have taken in this Google form a screenshot of this little table right here, and so it will be there for your consultation. So just take a little bit, maybe reserve 10 minutes to either actually walk through the building or to just picture the building in your mind and think about what you see and who is represented, and then document what evidence that you see and what takeaways you have from the process. Do you guys have any questions about that? I'm trying to be as fast as possible. Can they add?
You get it? So they have to go. These are equity champions. This is under the student services director. The mothership of this process, BELE, BELE, calls them equity detectives. They're commissars. And they pit teachers against each other. It's literally the professional equivalent of what happened in the ghettos and things in Weimar, Germany. So take that how you wish. I'm sorry, this stuff upsets me because they're destroying a profession and they're doing it in the name of trying to protect it now. That's how all this connects. They're destroying schools. They're destroying schools. And they're doing it in the name, and they're doing it on behalf of teachers in the name of protecting teachers. That's called a dialectic. It's a Marxist dialectic. It means that you pit two competing things against each other until you get some kind of consensus out of it. You get to take it over, basically. That's why you can't reason with these. You can't go at this like it's 1995, politicians. You can't go at this like it's, like we're dealing with George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. It's not the same thing. They take advantage of your good faith. They weaponize your good faith. Stop letting them do it. Detransition your mind from accepting their premises. Detransition your mind from accepting what they say and then following their narrative breadcrumbs because you refuse to hire people who actually spend time on the internet and know these people and what they do. And believe it or not, your standard PR director is not someone who can do that. They were trained by these people to follow their narrative crumbs. Literally. You're playing into the hands. Don't do it. Question everything. Question all the narratives. If you have a question about anything, you have any stories you want me to see, please send them my way. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. If you like the information I'm giving you, you really need to stay tuned. You really need to have as many people subscribe to this channel as possible, especially over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be giving you, first of all, some big interviews with some big people. I'm also going to be giving you amazing amounts of information about your local schools here in Oklahoma and how they connect beyond. The floodgates are coming done. And I'm not going to say that, but for those of you who've been following me for a while, I don't bluff. You know that. I have what I say I have. And here's the thing about it too. It's going to come out, even if I were to, just vanish tomorrow, still going to come out. I'm done messing around. Done. So share this video, like, subscribe, hit the bell. If you're watching on Facebook, please go to YouTube and like that and share from there. Don't share the Facebook. You can, but they're already knocking it down. And don't share it like 80 times right in a row, because that will knock it down too. Because there's people just don't do that. Okay? Share it a couple of times, send it to your friends in a messenger, share the YouTube videos. I would appreciate that. And you can always super chat me to support me, which means that you can pay for a chat for me to read and show on the air and ask a question and all kinds of things like that. I'll be back later today for something else. Going to be interesting. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. And I'll see you later.